The heat was heavy, the air tense, and every person watching knew something was about to go horribly wrong. Today we're looking at real-life moments when people entered lion enclosures and paid the price. Some walked away, others didn't. Stay tuned, you'll be shocked by how it ended. It was a clear afternoon at Hyderabad Zoo in India. Families walked between cages. School kids pointed excitedly at the animals, and the usual background noise of squawking birds and distant roars filled the air. In the lion enclosure, two massive males paced lazily in the shade, occasionally flicking their tails and scanning the crowd with that slow, assessing gaze only big cats have. Visitors were separated from the enclosure by a solid wall and an inner barrier, not just for safety, but because lions, even in captivity, can close the gap between you and them in less than 2 seconds. Then came 35-year-old Mukesh. To the people standing nearby, it was clear something was off. He walked toward the enclosure with an odd calmness, ignoring the signs, ignoring the shouts from the crowd. Before anyone could stop him, he climbed over the barrier and dropped down into the dry moat below. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, and a zookeeper screamed for security. At first, the lions didn't react. They were lounging under a tree, eyes half closed, conserving energy in the midday heat. But lions don't miss much. One lifted its head, ears twitching forward, nostrils flaring as it caught a whiff of this strange new scent. The other followed, muscles tensing under its golden coat. Mukesh began walking toward them, arms out, speaking to them as if they could understand. Some witnesses later said it sounded like he was chanting or praying. That didn't matter to the lions. In their world, an intruder stepping onto their turf was no different from a prey animal wandering into range. The larger of the two lowered its head, shoulders rolling forward in that slow, deliberate stalk. Its tail lashed once, a silent warning that anyone who's worked with lions would have recognized instantly. The attack was explosive. In a single bound, the lion closed the distance, knocking Mukesh off his feet with the force of a small car hitting a person. Its jaws locked around his shoulder, the pressure instantly breaking bone. Mukesh's scream was cut short as the second lion joined in, biting into his leg. The crowd was screaming now, children were being pulled away, and keepers were rushing with long sticks and firecrackers to drive the lions back. For almost 2 minutes, the keepers fought to separate them, using poles, water, and loud noises to push the lions toward the far side of the enclosure. When they finally managed to drag Mukesh's limp body out, he had deep puncture wounds in his neck, chest, and thigh. Despite the chaos, the lions showed no fear of the people above. They paced and growled, still agitated, still defending what they considered theirs. Mukesh died before he reached the hospital. Later, the zoo confirmed he had been acting strangely before the incident, possibly under the influence or experiencing a mental health crisis. It didn't matter to the lions. To them, instinct took over, and instincts don't care about human reasoning. Months later, another bizarre encounter with lions shocked a crowd, this time in Taipei, Taiwan. It was a warm day at the zoo, and the lion habitat was attracting its usual flow of tourists. Behind the heavy mesh fence and moat sat two male African lions, powerful and restless. Visitors stood safely above, snapping photos and pointing. Then in the middle of this calm, a man climbed over the fence. His name was Chen, a local preacher in his 40s. People stared in disbelief as he strolled across the grass toward the lions, carrying a Bible in one hand. He wasn't running, he wasn't scared, he was smiling, as if greeting old friends. Zoo staff yelled for him to turn back, but he didn't even glance at them. He walked right up to the first lion, stopped just a few feet away, and began speaking. Witnesses later said he was telling the lions they were children of God and wouldn't harm him. For a moment, the lions just stared. Then one moved fast. The lion lunged and clamped its teeth into Chen's right arm, shaking him like prey. The second lion joined in, raking its claws down his back. Chen fell, dropping his Bible, but kept shouting words about faith and divine protection even as the animals tore into him. The crowd's screams filled the air while keepers scrambled for tranquilizer rifles. It took several shots before the sedatives began to work. By the time staff pulled Chen out, his clothes were shredded and his arm was broken in multiple places, with deep bite wounds running from his shoulder to his wrist. Incredibly, he survived, but he spent months in the hospital. Authorities later charged him for trespassing and endangering public safety. The lions, meanwhile, were unharmed, but kept under tighter security. While those two incidents left one man dead and another severely injured, the next story would be even more shocking, because the man involved wasn't just trespassing, he was there for a thrill. It was a chilly day at the Yunggor Wildlife Park in Ningbo, China. Visitors strolled between enclosures, bundled in coats. In the tiger habitat, 4 Siberian tigers prowled across a large grassy area, separated from the public by a high wall and wide moat. These weren't lazy zoo cats, they were muscular, restless predators used to open space. That morning, a 40-year-old man named Zhang had gone to the park with friends. But instead of paying for entry, Zhang decided to sneak in by climbing the outer fence, crossing the safety barriers, and scaling the inner wall of the tiger enclosure. It was the kind of reckless move that would be over in minutes. And it was. Visitors saw him drop into the enclosure and at first thought he was a keeper. Then they realized he was running barefoot in the opposite direction of the service gate. The tiger saw him too. One crouched low, eyes locked, tail twitching. Zhang didn't make it far. The first tiger hit him from behind, knocking him flat. A second tiger joined in, biting into his neck. The attack was brutal and fast. The crowd could only watch as keepers fired warning shots into the air, hoping to scare them off. But tigers don't scare easily. They're territorial hunters. It took nearly an hour for staff to recover Zhang's body after the tigers dragged him toward the back of the enclosure. The park later confirmed Zhang had ignored multiple warning signs and entered the zoo illegally. The tigers were not killed, but their enclosure was modified to make such an entry nearly impossible in the future. Far from Asia, in the bustling city of Belo Horizonte, Brazil, another zoo was about to become the stage for a reckless encounter. This time, the animals weren't massive predators. They were spider monkeys, smaller than lions or tigers. Yes, but still wild, quick, and armed with teeth sharp enough to slice through skin with ease. It was a warm weekend afternoon at the city zoo. Families were gathered around the monkey enclosures, laughing as the agile primates leapt from branch to branch, tails curling around ropes and tree limbs like extra hands. Signs in Portuguese warned visitors not to feed or touch the animals. Those signs weren't just for the monkeys' safety, they were for the people's too. A man in his 20s stood watching the spider monkeys. According to witnesses, he had been drinking before arriving at the zoo. Whether it was bravado, curiosity, or just drunken foolishness, he decided it would be fun to get closer. Ignoring the warnings, he vaulted the barrier and stepped into the enclosure. The monkeys froze, their sharp eyes locked on this strange intruder. At first, they didn't move. Then in an instant, they swarmed him. One leapt onto his shoulder, baring its teeth. Another darted in from the side, grabbing at his clothing. Spider monkeys are social animals, and when one feels threatened, the others join in. In seconds, the man was surrounded, trying to swat them away. The bites came quickly, hands, arms, even his legs as the monkeys climbed him like a tree. Their screeches rang out across the zoo, drawing the attention of keepers who came running with nets and sticks. The man tried to retreat, but panic had taken over and the monkeys weren't letting up. By the time staff managed to pull him out, his shirt was shredded and his skin was covered in bloody bite marks and scratches. At the hospital, doctors confirmed he had been bitten multiple times deep enough to risk infection. He needed rabies shots and a tetanus booster, along with treatment for torn muscle tissue in one arm. The zoo pressed charges for trespassing and disturbing the animals, and the man faced a heavy fine. As for the monkeys, they returned to their branches and ropes as if nothing had happened. Another reminder that even small animals can cause serious harm when provoked. While that incident involved a drunken impulse, the next story was pure attention seeking, and it played out not in a zoo, but in an aquarium. In Toronto, Canada, the Ripley's Aquarium of Canada was having a busy evening. Families with kids, couples on dates, and groups of friends moved between massive tanks filled with exotic fish, stingrays, and in one enormous glass-walled pool, several large sharks. These weren't great whites, but they were still powerful predators, sand tiger sharks and nurse sharks, some over 8 feet long. It was around 10 p.m. when security cameras caught a man in his 30s walking toward the shark tank. He had been at a nearby event earlier, and witnesses later said he smelled strongly of alcohol. Without a word, he climbed over the waist-high barrier, stripped off his clothes, and dove headfirst into the water. The crowd froze. The sharks kept circling lazily at first, their movements smooth and silent. The man swam toward the center of the tank, clearly enjoying the attention. At one point, he dove to the bottom, kicking up sand as a large shark passed just feet from his face. Staff shouted for him to get out, warning him of the danger, but he just grinned and waved at the spectators. Sharks in captivity are accustomed to human presence, but not in their water. They can react unpredictably to sudden movements or splashing. Onlookers later said there were a few moments where one of the bigger sand tiger sharks seemed to shadow him, swimming in tight circles nearby. After a few minutes, the man climbed out on the far side of the tank, grabbed his clothes, and slipped into the crowd before security could reach him. The aquarium contacted police, and a few days later, he was identified and charged with mischief and trespassing. The stunt had made headlines across Canada, but it also sparked outrage, not just because of the risk to himself, but because human intrusion can stress the animals, even if no attack occurs. Looking back at all these incidents, from the deadly lion mauling in Hyderabad, to the preacher in Taipei, the tiger killing in Ningbo, the monkey swarm in Brazil, and the Shark Tank stunt in Toronto, one thing is clear: crossing into an animal's space is never just a joke or a test of bravery. It's a gamble with instincts honed over millions of years. Instincts that see humans not as special, but as threats or prey. Animals don't follow our rules. They don't care about your good intentions, your religious beliefs, or your need for a thrill. Step into their territory and you're on their terms. Some people learn that the hard way, and some don't live to tell the tale. And that's it. Some of the most unbelievable moments of people stepping into danger they never should have. If you enjoyed this wild ride, hit that like button, share it with a friend, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next story.